Pesach. And today is Monday. We're learning the stories of the ancient kings of Israel. I'm Rabbi David Vigler. A pleasure to study with you. Thank you for joining me here this morning. We are in the middle of our series, Monday mornings. You can always review the series at youtube.com/Jewish Gardens. That's youtube.com/Jewish Gardens. We're going to learn this morning about the era of Babylon, when the despotic, mad king of Babylon, his name was Nebuchadnezzar. He's the fellow who destroyed our very first temple in Jerusalem. He had destroyed our temple, exiled the Jews, the majority of the Jews, to the land of his land, the land of Babylon, which is modern day Iraq. And there he had that crazy dream. He didn't know what the dream was, and he asked his necromancers to interpret the dream for him. We learned in our recent classes how Daniel rose to fame when he was inspired by God for the answers that King Nebuchadnezzar sought. Not only did he have the explanation of the dream, but he also had the dream itself, which the king forgot. It was foretelling the entire future of world history until the coming of Mashiach. It was quite an amazing dream that Nebuchadnezzar was given, and that is something you can hear at youtube.com/Jewish Gardens. But today, we're moving forward with his next maniacal decree, which was something we also learned about in the last class. It was about the great idol that he set up in the valley of Dura, and he demanded that everyone should bow down to this idol, and anyone that would bow down to the idol, anyone that would not bow down to the idol would be subsequently executed. We learned how Daniel was out on a mission in Israel, and eventually came back, and he was brought to Dura. He asked to kiss the idol, we learned last time, and what is his intention by kissing the idol was to remove from the mouth of the idol the holy tzitz, which was the forehead plate that had the name of God inscribed upon it. It was part of the clothing of the high priest in the holy temple, a very, very holy object. And by placing this holy object from the high priest that was looted from Jerusalem, from the holy temple, by placing that in the mouth of the idol, it caused the idol to speak, saying, Ani Hashem Elokecha, I am God, your God. When Daniel came close to the mouth of the idol, he snatched it away from the idol, and that resulted in the idol falling over and being destroyed. And that's what we're holding right now. But until this point, that before Daniel was able to destroy the idol, there was a very interesting episode, which was a matter of Kiddush Hashem, the sanctification of the name of Hashem, by three extraordinary individuals, which I'm going to share with you right now. Just before we begin, I'd like to welcome Terry Zweig from Atlanta, Robert Saunders, Howard and Susan from Boynton, Robert Berger, great to see you again, Winston from Indonesia, Dean Dubansky from Juneau, Elaine from Ibis, and Keith also from Juneau. Great to see everybody who's here with us live and later, as well as Steve who's with us live. Thank you very much. Let's do this. So Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were three colleagues of Daniel, and they heard about the decree of the king, about the obligation for every citizen of Babylon, of the empire of Nebuchadnezzar, to come to Dura, to bow down to the idol, to pledge allegiance to his idiotic idolatry. They were young Jewish lads, and they hurried to the prophet Yechezkel, who also was exiled to Babylon, the prophet Ezekiel. He's actually buried there until this very day. It would be a wonderful, amazing experience to go and visit his grave. So when they heard that they had to bow down to the idol, they ran over to the prophet Yechezkel, Ezekiel, to ask him his advice. What should they do? The prophet advised them to hide until the king's decree would become null and void. But we want to sanctify the name of God in public, said the lads. We also want to go to the valley of Dura and to not bow down to the idol, so that everyone will see that there is no other God upon the face of this earth other than God, the master of the universe. When the prophet heard their words, the prophet asked God if Hashem was going to save these three lads, these three young men who wanted to sanctify the name for God, the name of God, I'm sorry. And Hashem responded to him, my sons have sinned. They have abandoned my mitzvahs. They have abandoned me. Tell the people that are with you that I will not save them. Not only that, also the remnant of my people that are still in the land of Israel. Not all the Jews were actually exiled. There was a remnant. which, by the way, is the reason that we fast on the day after Rosh Hashanah. Today is the day after Pesach. The day after Rosh Hashanah is called Tzom Gedalia because it represents the exile of the final remnant of the Jewish people during the Babylonian era. If not that they were exiled, we would have had an unbroken chain of Jewish presence in the land of Israel for the past 4,000 years. But tragically, that's what happened. Led to a lot of political problems for us. In any event, tell them, says Hashem to the prophet Ezekiel, not only will I not save them, but also the remnant of the Jewish people in the land of Israel will be exiled as well. Also, the temple will be destroyed because of their great sins. With great distress and sadness, Yechezkel delivers these words to the young lads. However, the three boys did not give up on their desire to sanctify the name of God. They said, even the frogs of Egypt, when Hashem sent them in the second plague to take vengeance and retribution, to sanctify the name of God, they also didn't think about their own comforts, and they jumped straight into the ovens of the Egyptians in order to sanctify the name of God. They actually quoted the frogs of Egypt. If the frogs are able to sanctify the name of God with total disregard for their own safety and well-being and comforts, how much more so should we be obligated to do the same thing? Said Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah in their hearts, and they decided to go to the valley of Dura fearlessly. When the three lads left the presence of Yechezkel, the prophet cried out and he said, woe to the righteous tzaddikim and to the chassidim, that even upon them God has no mercy because of the great sins of our people. Right away, God responds to him after the boys had left. And he said, do you really think that I will take out my anger on these righteous men? No. The people of Israel, truly I will punish them badly. However, these three boys, I will save them. I only wanted that they should not be cognizant of the fact that I will save them so that they will be able to fulfill the mitzvah of sanctifying the name of God wholeheartedly. By them not being aware that they will be saved, they will be able to fulfill the mitzvah with all of their heart. They will actually believe, having heard from the prophet, from you, that they will not be saved. They actually will believe that they're dying for the name of God. And that's an extraordinary mitzvah. It's one of the greatest mitzvahs of the Torah. V'nikdashti b'toch b'nei Yisrael. And you shall sanctify the name of God amongst the people of Israel. Good morning, Corey and Dan. With great strength, boldly, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah stood before the king of Babylon, and they refused to bow down to the idol. The king, needless to say, was not impressed. He shouted at them and he said, how dare you stand and violate my commandment? Does not your God command in his Torah that you're obligated to listen to the king that you are subjects of? Now, there is a concept of dina de malchusa dina, that the law of the land in which you live in is law, even according to Torah. But that's only true when it comes to laws that don't conflict with Torah. So if the king of the land you live in, let's say if the United States of America commanded everyone to bow down to idols, we would not be obligated to listen to that. When the United States of America obligates us to pay taxes, that's fine. You have to pay taxes. If you want to live here, then the tax bracket is X, Y, or Z. You got to pay whatever the law is. But if the law becomes one that violates Torah, then it's no longer anything we have to listen to. And that's really what the lads answered the king. They said, our master the king, everything you tell us to do, we will do. Any tax which you place upon us and every hard labor that you tell us to do, we will do. Only we will not serve your God. We will not bow down to an idol of gold that you made. Even if you shout at us and you command us to be punished, we will not change our minds. These words angered the king tremendously, and he commanded his servants to make a tremendous fire oven with a very powerful fire to throw in these three lads in order that all the people of the land should see what happens to those that rebel against the words of Nebuchadnezzar, the great emperor. Good morning, Alicia. So far, so good. Good to see you, Ed Hockman. By the way, quick announcement. Our Daily Minyan is thriving outdoors, 7:30 a.m. weekdays and 9 a.m. on Sundays. We hope that you can join us. We daven outside. We're socially distanced, and we hope that you'll join us as we slowly get over our PTSD from human contact. And it's important to get back together. So guys, please join us. Okay, so what happens? The great furnace that the three men were going to be thrown into, the servants of Nebuchadnezzar, they ignited it with petrol, with tar, and with many, many woods through days and nights until the flames of the fire burst out and even reached a height of 49 cubits. 49 cubits is about 100 feet high, is the height of those flames. These three who were judged to death wore their Shabbos clothes, because this was a great mitzvah that they were going to be fulfilling, and they waited with great joy for the fulfillment of their decree. Anyone who saw them on the way to the furnace, on the way to their death, could not believe what they saw, because they literally skipped their way with joy on their faces to go and sanctify the name of God in the face of all of the nations. The fire of the furnace was so great that 4 kings who were standing nearby it were burned and died from its heat. I guess Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, was king of many, many, many kings. So there were kings that he placed near the furnace, and they also died. I guess it was in some sort of a stadium, perhaps. And whoever was sitting nearest to the fire was singed and burned. Immediately, they grabbed the 3 boys, 3 men, whatever, and they threw them into the fire, and they stood from a distance. Now, this kind of reminds us, this story reminds us of what happened to Abraham. When Abraham refused to bow down to the idol that Nimrod made in his days, a very, very similar story happened. Just to mention to you, this is not the first time such a story is unfolding, such a drama. So let's see what happens. The great fire the great furnace lifted up suddenly from the face of the earth, in order that everyone should see it, almost like magically, like lifted up, that everyone should be able to see what's going on inside of the fire. And great windows were made inside of the furnace, that people could see inside and see what's going on. Inside of the fire, this burning, flaming fire, were Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, and they raised their eyes to Hashem, and they cried out to Hashem, and they said as follows: Master of the universe, it is known before you everything. And it's also known before you that we did whatever we've done only in order to sanctify your great and holy name. We didn't want the people that your name should be violated and desecrated before the eyes of the nations. And now, Hashem, do not give honor to us, only to your name. Why should the nations say, where is the Jewish God? Please do with us kindness with your great mercy, in order that all the dwellers of the earth should know that only you are the king upon the face of the earth. At that moment, the angels, the holy angels of God, the angels of glory, stood before God and asked him permission to go down and save the 3 men who were sanctifying the name of God. But Hashem said to the angels, I will not send you down to save them. They have literally laid down their lives in order to save me, and therefore I myself will go down and save them from the fire. Also, the angel in charge of hail stood before God and asked to descend into the furnace. He wanted to sort of rain hail and put out the fire in order to cool down the fire so that they wouldn't be killed. However, the angel Gabriel argued that if you, the angel of hail, descends into the furnace, then nobody will really know that this is the greatness of God. Everybody will think, oh, it was just a weird kind of rain that came at the right time, and nobody will think it was an actual miracle. But if I, the angel of fire, Gabriel is the angel of fire, the angel of strictness and discipline is fire. If I go down and cool down the fire, then everybody will see that fire is cooling down fire. That can only happen in a miraculous way. This can only happen by a higher power, that there is none like it. And these words of Gabriel were good in the eyes of Hashem, and Gabriel was commanded to go down and do what was commanded, what he said he was going to do. Now, this is interesting, because before we said that God himself was going to do it, now the angel Gabriel was going to do it. Kind of an interesting situation. This is a heavenly conversation. It's literally out of this world. Good morning, Marty. So good to see you. And Mary, welcome, Mary Dullinger and Alicia. Okay, so let's see what happens in this incredible story of the sanctification of the name of God. At that moment, the angel Gabriel goes down into the furnace of fire, and the people, the myriads of people around, saw something that they've never seen before. Inside of the furnace, it became cold, and around it was boiling hot. Many of the people who were near the fire were burned outside. Were burned because of the flaming fires. They were 100 feet, those flames. Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah saw the great miracle that was happening to them, and they praised God with great loud voices. They sang to him until their voice of singing was heard throughout the valley of Dura. There stood many people and they saw this miracle of the three men that were not being burned in the fire. It reminds you of the burning bush of Moses, right? It reminds you also of the Hanukkah miracle, of the 8 days of oil, the oil that was burning for 8 days, but it wasn't burning. It also reminds you of the miracle of Abraham, when a similar thing happened to him, when King Nimrod threw him into the fire, and he was also miraculously saved in a similar way. With confusion and shock, the servants of the king quickly hurried to tell the king of the great wonder that was going on. They told Nebuchadnezzar that the three people that were judged to death, together with another person, together with another person that we don't know who he is, are walking through the furnace as if they're in some air-conditioned room. When they told this to Nebuchadnezzar, he hurried to see what's going on, and he said, the man, the extra mystery man inside of that furnace, is the one who was sent to save the three Jews. He is the man. Fascinating. He is the very same man that I've met before. He is the man that mysteriously killed many years ago all the soldiers of the army of Sancheriv, king of Ashur. Let me remind you of that story. We learned about it. When the 12 tribes lived in Israel, they were first conquered by Sancheriv, king of Assyria. He conquered the 10 tribes of Israel, and he exiled them to a place that we still don't know where they are. They are still the 10 lost tribes 2,800 years later. But that same king Sancheriv laid siege to Jerusalem as well. We actually read about him yesterday in the Haftarah reading. And what happened was that King Chizkiyahu, the king of Jerusalem, lay down to sleep and study Torah. He said, I'm not going to make this my problem. It's God's problem. I have perfect trust in God, the doctrine of blind trust that God will save me. And that night was Pesach night, when millions of soldiers were camped around besieging the city of Jerusalem. And Judaism would never have survived. It was that night that a mysterious plague, an epidemic spread through the camp of the soldiers of Nebuchadnezzar. All of them died except for 5, maybe except for 3, according to another version that we learned. One of those surviving soldiers was Nebuchadnezzar, who ultimately became the emperor of Babylon. So now when Nebuchadnezzar sees in the fire the three Jews that are surviving and the 4th mystery guy that's with them, he says, that's the guy that killed the entire army of Assyria, that ended the Assyrian Empire. And I was one of 5 that survived. It was the king, his 2 sons, and me, and someone else that were saved. That's the guy. This is the guy you don't want to mess with. With great anger, he called to his servants, and he said, capture the Jews that have bowed down to the idol. Capture the Jews that did bow down to the idol under my command. They are the servants of a great God, and they knew what a powerful God they have. Nebuchadnezzar has a 180-degree turn of heart, and they know that there is no God as great as them. Nevertheless, they had the audacity to make him angry, to bow down to my idol built by flesh and blood. If that is what happened over here, do they want that their God will destroy Babylon, our land, because of them? How dare they desecrate their God? At that moment, the great idol fell down inside the valley of Dura and was completely destroyed. I guess this was a follow-up to what Daniel did when he took out the tzitz, the forehead plate. There was a plate of gold that was with the name of God that was ransacked from the Holy Temple. I mentioned it earlier. It is the finger of God, they all said. And the king said, and he commanded his servants to take out Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah from the furnace. When they stood before him, very emotional, together with many of the people of the land who saw the miracle. And they said, you know the great strength of your God, that he can do miracles and wonders, and you did not go in his ways. Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonian emperor, is now talking to the Jews that violated his command and that did worship his idol. He says, you knew the greatness and the miracles and wonders of your great God, and you still violated him. You did not keep his mitzvahs, and you caused in your great sins that his holy temple in Jerusalem should be destroyed through me, right? And that you should be exiled to a foreign land. You should be ashamed of yourself, said Nebuchadnezzar. We are laughing at you. Jews who have no respect for themselves, the Gentiles have no respect for them either. Gentiles respect Jews who respect themselves. And they called this out with a great voice, and they shouted, and the people shouted. Sorry, the people spat at the 3 Jews that were now saved from death. I don't understand why they spat at the Jews that were saved from death. I'm not exactly sure why this happened. I guess they were talking to these 3 Jews, Hanani, Mishael, and Azariah, as if they represented the rest of the Jews who did violate the command. So they were like literally preaching to the choir here. Let's see what happened. These 3 Jews almost were killed now. The ones who were saved miraculously from the fire. These 3 Jews, Hanani, Mishael, and Azariah, was almost killed by the mob that stood around them as they shouted at them and mocked them for the fact that the Jews did not keep the Torah of the Creator of the world, of their God, who no one is like Him amongst the heavens and the earth. With great humility and acceptance of the judgment, Hanani, Mishael, and Azariah lifted up their eyes to God, and they said, "To you, Hashem, is tzedakah, is justice, and we are embarrassed. We are deserving of the mockery of these Gentiles and for the great punishments that you are punishing upon us right now." Afterwards, these 3 left Babylon. They arose up to the land of Israel to learn Torah from the mouth of Yehoshua ben Yehotzadak, the high priest. In the merit of this great miracle, the Gentiles of Babylon destroyed their idols, and they made from them bells for the collars of their dogs. And they said, "So shall be done to the idol, which is totally useless." So that's the story, friends, of the Kiddush Hashem, the sanctification of the name of God by Hanani, Mishael, and Azariah. And I want to leave you with this thought. It is a mitzvah to die for God. It's a mitzvah to sanctify the name of God. You can do that in one of many ways. One way to do that is by dying for God. So, for example, when a guy like Daniel Pearl or some guy caught by terrorists, and he says, "I was born a Jew and I will die a Jew," even if he lived a life that was completely secular, it doesn't matter. If he's killed for being a Jew, then he sanctified the name of God. But you don't have to die for God in order to sanctify the name of God. You can live for God and sanctify the name of God. When you live the life of a mensch, when people see you keeping Shabbos, going to shul, and that makes you into more of a mensch, not less of a mensch, then they say, look at what does your family say when they see you starting to wear a yarmulke? When they see you getting more spiritually involved, when they see you learning Torah, doing mitzvahs, davening, laying tefillin, lighting Shabbos candles, and they say, "Wow, look what happened to our family member. By becoming more religious, they became more of a mensch instead of less of a mensch." If you become more religious and more judgmental, the people around you are going to say, "Yuck, I don't want to have anything to do with that. Look what God does to people." But when you become more of a mensch, when you become more sensitive, more kind, more focused on the needs of the people around you, that is what inspires the people around you to say, "Wow, look at the Jewish God, look at the God of the Jews, and I would like to be more like that." So thank you very much, everybody. Marty, I'm glad you agree. Thank you very much, everybody. From strength to strength, we are all ambassadors of God, wherever we are. You know what? Everybody knows that we're Jewish. They all know that we're Jewish, okay? And the question is, how do you behave? If you have respect for yourself, respect for your faith, then the Goyim respect us too. But when a Jew, God forbid, works on Yom Kippur, when he violates his own Torah, his own mitzvahs, his own God, his own charter, then what kind of respect do you think the Goyim have for us? Just a quick thought I want to mention to you here. There was this movie came out a few months ago, maybe a year ago. I think it was a Netflix something. Oh, the one about the Satmar community where they unorthodox, I think it was. And all the Jews were saying to me, "Oh, vey, how embarrassing it is to us, how embarrassing that the Satmar seem to be living such a life of such a primitive, backward life where they have no respect for women and all that kind of stuff." And I said to my fellow Jews, I said, "Listen, guys, I don't know what's going on over there in Satmar. I can tell you that is a gross exaggeration of the story written by a woman who clearly was disenchanted and angry with her religious roots. Okay, so please, you have to consider the source." But I said, before you start pointing fingers at religious Jews saying that they are somehow desecrating the name of God before the Gentiles, I want you to take a good look at yourself. Take a very good look at yourself. When a Gentile sees you and they say, "Oh, you're a Jew and you don't fulfill the commandments of your God. I guess you're eating in a non-kosher restaurant right now. I guess it's Shabbos, it's your Sabbath, it's your whatever, it's your Passover and you're eating in whatever," right? If you don't respect yourself, then why do you think you're doing any better job than the people those poor people that were portrayed in the movie of unorthodox. So before we point fingers at other people and say how they desecrate in the name of God, let us think hard and well about ourselves. What kind of job are we doing to sanctify the name of God amongst the people around us? Do we have respect for ourselves? Do we have respect for our God? Do we have respect for our religion? Or maybe, God forbid, the other way. Anyways, thank you. I got to go, everybody. Thank you for joining me here this morning. It's a pleasure to study with you as always. Back on track. See you tomorrow with Tanya study, 8:30 a.m. Shalom. Have a great day.